We're going to transition over into our next panel on educating on electrification. So I'd like to invite up Seth Little from CLEAResult, who will be moderating our panel, and we have 3 panelists joining him.
Morning, everyone. So as Nate said, the panel that sits between you and lunchtime is education on electrification, what's next with the IRA and beyond. I am joined by a distinguished panel. I'm really excited to dive into this topic. I will say that I am terrified of that little clicker, and so I am really grateful that we're not going to do any slides today. You know, like Simon's presentation yesterday, we're going to have hopefully a pretty engaging conversation, kind of both up here on the stage and then also with you folks. And so that's the format that we will rely upon for the day. I'd like to start with just a little bit of introductions, and if I can borrow Holly's conceit a little bit, I have very frequently over my career kind of considered myself a juggler. And, you know, at CLEAResult, I'm privileged to be able to get to think about a couple different areas of focus. One of those is customer engagement. So how we use programmatic design to engage with utility customers in service of program goals. That very frequently has kind of a digital component as well. And then also, right, like in the age of electrification, you know, how do we take some best practices developed in utility energy efficiency program delivery and apply those to new markets in service of new goals? And so those are kind of the balls that I'll seek to juggle this morning. But I would like to start just kind of by having our panel introduce themselves. And maybe as you introduce yourselves, also maybe kind of say why you're excited to be here today, or kind of the lens that you're thinking about education and electrification, you know, from your professional perspective. Want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I'm Keith Dennis. Oh. Terrified of this thing. I'm Keith Dennis. I'm the president of the Beneficial Electrification League. I'm excited to be here because, you know, I've been working on this issue for about 10 years now. And of course, the pathway projects for climate, you know, indicate that if you are going to meet a low carbon future, you need to electrify more of the economy. But you're not going to electrify more of the economy in the United States without consumers, because we're a country with consumer choice, and there's a lot of decision points between here and an electrified economy. So if you're not taking the consumer into consideration when you're trying to implement this type of thing, you're going to have backlash, you're going to have unhappy people, and you're not going to have any progress. So it's really an important topic.
Bret?
Hi, my name is this on? Okay.
Yeah, we got.
Hi, my name is Bret Giles. I am a project manager for Southern Company. I have been in the utility space for 28 years, so I'm a lifer my entire career. Most of that's been at Georgia Power Company. But for the past 2 years, I've been at Southern Company as a project manager for clean transportation. Really, what has me excited about this is over that 28-year career, we have these big events that happen, or these big, I guess, products that come our way every 10 years or so that really help us engage with the customer and position us as a trusted energy partner and an advisor and advocate. And I definitely see electric transportation and really electrification as that new opportunity to get in front of our customer and, you know, really partner with them to help them implement these.
Jill?
Yes, so I'm the director of Energy Star Products, Marketing and Communications. And, you know, no surprise, I work for the Environmental Protection Agency. So I'm into this because of the climate, carbon reduction. Very excited about it. Obviously, I'm an environmentalist. But I'll tell you what, Energy Star stands for energy efficiency. And I'm a marketer too. And energy efficiency is a marketer's dream. It's a marketer's dream. I'll tell you why, because it has that trifecta of benefits, right? You save energy, you save money, and guess what? You help the environment too. So it's the #1 thing a consumer can do for the environment that has a lot of household benefits. Now, we've been doing more and more of electrification, and electrification is a harder sell, honestly, because you're dealing with heat pumps, right? Who cares about heat pumps? But I love it because it's a challenge, and I really love to problem solve as a marketer. Electrification can't happen without efficiency. So they go so well together. So I'm very excited about this. I'm consumer centric. That's all I do is think about the consumer behavior, the residential consumer. That's my focus. And I'm so excited to talk to utilities and how you can work with consumers and how we can all work together to make this transition.
Great. So, as we prepared for this panel, we realized that, there's just a ton of area that we could cover. It has actually been interesting over the past couple of days to note how often electrification and its close cousin decarbonization has been a topic of discussion, really. Like, I know we don't get like subject matter thematic with the members meeting, but I feel like if there was one, this topic and its related discussions would really be high on the list. And, we really want to keep ourselves centered for this discussion around, like very much the education aspect and the customer experience as part of that. But Bret, I'd like to start with you. I think there are ways in which electrification within transportation kind of has a head start on these like the building based electrification tactics. So can you share any areas where you've learned that how we educate customers on this portion of electrification could maybe serve these lagging measures?
Sure. I'd say that, in a lot of ways, an electric vehicle is just the next big smart appliance. I mean, it's kind of everything. It's an appliance, it's a computer, it is transportation, it's a battery, it's a smart hub, I guess, to control other things. So I think that it's kind of the intersection of high technology, high tech and high performance and customization and ease and convenience. And it's all of those things that people get excited about to say, well, maybe I should take a look at that. And once you have that person that's, is interested or they become a fan, they kind of help sell your product for you or help deliver your message for you. But then they also are looking for their next step or what they can continue to do. And so that's why I see electric transportation and electrification really as the convergence of those things. It gets people talking to their utility again. It gets us positioned as their advisor to help them answer questions, to help them with their research. We create tools and communications and websites and all of these things we can do to take that burden off of them and help them make that transition. So I
think that makes a lot of sense. Jill, you mentioned that, being really excited about promoting energy efficiency, and I think you kind of hinted at some of the differences on electrification. Can you spend a little bit more time there, right? Like, how do we need to educate differently in the electrification space than what has worked with energy efficiency?
Well, we'll always do both, right? Because you can't get a green grid without efficiency. It's just not going to happen. And what's great about the products that we certify, and obviously this is how we're evolving, right? It's more clean electric, right? We're getting away from labeling gas products. But I think the big differences really are that where the biggest gains are, the high impact products, and I mentioned it before, are our friends, the heat pump. My favorite product, honestly, but guess what? It's not consumers' favorite product because guess what? They don't care. They don't care about their heating system. They don't care about their water heating until it doesn't work, right? So the hardest thing for us is how do we get consumers excited about this product? They may be interested in the environment and electrification, but you know what a pain in the ass it is to update your HVAC system. It's hard for everybody, and particularly low-income customers. It's so expensive. And heat pumps are sadly harder. Why? Because they're more expensive, at least now. And finding an installer who will tell you, oh yeah, I'm going to install that heat pump, especially a plumber who's excited about heat pump water heaters, they just don't exist. So it's moving a whole market, right? It's about market acceleration. And what I'll tell you, so that's what we're invested in. our whole organization, right? Because I have a team of sales and marketing folks that focus on products. And they're working on market development. So we have a lot of tools for utilities to help them from a market development standpoint, because it's just not about the consumer only. It's about a contractor network. It's about training contractors. It's about contractor outreach. It's about programs that deliver what customers need. And so I'll get to what I think is the best way to market a heat pump. You're never going to get people excited about it. I'm sorry. You're never going to. First of all, you need to make sure that you myth bust, right? Because people like heat pump. How the hell is a heat pump going to? I'm cold. You know, how am I going to extract heat from the cold air? Like, how is that going to work? I'm going to be uncomfortable. A lot of people feel like the air that's coming out of the vent is colder, you know, and they're like, it's not working, you know, but it is working, right? So there's that hurdle, which is education, education, education. But still, even if you educate, they're not going to be, they're certainly not going to be excited about it until they have to upgrade. So, you know, so I think it's really about a deal. It's about a deal. It's about this. Look, my system's old, right? You need to be proactive. And guess what? I'm dangling a deal in front of you. And look, the Inflation Reduction Act is going to help. But you all utilities, you are the history of deals. I would not have this job with Energy Star without utilities and utility rebates. They really work. You know this, you see this. And so it's really about structuring your program so you're dangling those deals, but you make those deals easy to get. And so it's going to be about instant rebates, which is going to be about midstream programs. And it's going to be about reaching out to contractors and developing that network so you can send somebody who's interested in taking advantage of the deal, a contractor and a plumber who's going to be like, yep, I'm going to update and get you a heat pump. So I think that's really going to be, and I can't emphasize enough the proactive replacement. Under duress, people are never going to, you know, I mean, it's going to take a long time to develop the market so that a heat pump's on the truck. And the guy's like, okay, here's your new water heater. It's going to take a long time. That we're working on it. We're not, you know, we're not giving up. So it's really about encouraging. It's educating about proactive replacement and using these incentives to get them thinking. And, you know, for LIDAC, for low-income disadvantaged communities, it's about doing it for them. We're going to have to do it for them. And that's what I love about the IRA as well, is that gives us a leg up on that audience.
There's so much there, right? And like kind of as Anne really hinted at earlier, you know, like there's no one single element that's going to get us home, right? And
No.
you know, like this is all going to have to work as a patchwork. It's all going to have to work together. You know, we're going to have to pull the customer through to demand and then also provide them a market.
Full push.
Yeah, where they can work. And we're all going to have to work on that together. Keith, can you talk a little bit about the importance and the weight that beneficial carries within beneficial electrification?
Yeah, and I'll maybe pull a contrarian view on a couple of those things. First, I don't think that electrification is necessarily a new thing or that, you know, electric vehicles are the forefront of this. We've been electrifying for 100 years and it's improved people's lives tremendously. So we've had waves of this where it was people setting up kitchens to show people how they could wash dishes with a dishwasher, or we had a wave of fans that cool you down. Then we had air conditioning and people saying, oh, how are we going to power all these air conditioners? And that really improved people's lives. And this is just another wave of it. We do have the ability now to electrify transportation, but that doesn't mean that this is new. And now that climate's involved, there's kind of this other side of it where people are getting involved in it for another reason. And it seems a little bit new and it can get political, but it's important to kind of bring that historical context. The idea of beneficial electrification is the idea of using electricity to benefit us. And that's certainly not new. It's been since the dawn of electricity. And if you were on a farm that didn't have electricity and then you had a light bulb, you know, that really benefits my life. So we talk about what is beneficial electrification, and we have 4 main points. One is that hopefully it saves people money, because if it doesn't, they're not going to think it's beneficial to them. Helps the environment, because if it doesn't, people aren't going to think it's beneficial to them. Some people, you know, if it helps the grid. We heard from Dan earlier about folks who are really concerned about the idea of grid congestion and blackouts. If it's not helping the grid, people aren't going to see it as beneficial. And it needs to improve quality of life. It can't be a car that doesn't work for you. It can't be a heat pump that doesn't work in your house. If it does one of those things and it doesn't harm any of the other ones, we kind of call it a Hippocratic oath, then you're going to think, most people are going to think it's beneficial. If it's saving you money, helping the environment, not hurting the grid, beneficial. Now, if it's violating one of those, it might be a little bit more tricky. On the energy efficiency side, I actually think energy efficiency is a little bit outdated. It was definitely a big deal during the oil embargo. It's definitely important not to waste energy. But I think what we're looking at now is more of an emissions efficiency, and whether or not the efficiency of electric products is lower from an emission standpoint than a different product. For example, I'll just say the water heater. A water heater that you plug into the grid right now is I think 15 to 20% more efficient than it was just in 2005. And that's just because it was plugged into the grid. Now, if you're looking at energy efficiency, that water heater, no matter what, if you're heating water for a house, is going to use the same amount of energy this year, next year, today, tomorrow. But if you're using it at night, instead of in the day, or in the day instead of at night, depending on if you have wind at night or solar in the day, it could have a hugely different emissions profile and could have a hugely different effect on peak load. And so is the efficiency of that product really as relevant as it was when we were just doing everything to maximize the least amount of energy we use? Is it better to use half as much energy at the wrong time as it is to use twice as much at the right time? If one has 0 emissions and the other has a ton of emissions. So I think we need to get away from a couple of those thought processes if we're going to market correctly the benefits of electrification.
Or maybe we just kind of increase the level of resolution that which we look at energy use, right? Like, a time-based efficiency, right? Like, maybe not you like, I think we talk a lot about the importance of breaking down the silos, both between kind of regulatory areas, but maybe and also like thinking separately about electrification and efficiency is a useful metric as well, right? Like we can think about when we're saving the energy, to your point, on the grid and how that helps. So like I've got some really good questions that I'm excited to ask these panelists about, but like jump in y'all at any point at all. I think there was an interesting article that came out last week in Canary Media about the regulator in Massachusetts recommending to National Grid that they establish a winter heat pump rate. And I thought that was really interesting, right? Like one of the acknowledged obstacles that we see in particularly the electrification portion of the Inflation Reduction Act programs is the fact that, we could put a heat pump into a customer's home without weatherization. We could potentially see a spike in electricity bills and maybe a lowering in comfort for those kind of customers. And, while this isn't an incremental or while this isn't, its own silver bullet, I think it's a good step in the right direction to acknowledge that, not just an electric heat rate, but like a heat pump rate in the wintertime is a good way to begin to align kind of some of the societal benefits associated with electrification with the personal benefits, particularly within a low and moderate income space. And so like kind of coming out of that, I have a couple different questions, and maybe for anybody that wants to answer, but like, like what role does like rate planning play in electrification as we move forward into this space?
Well, I can speak to that from a Georgia Power standpoint. Again, to your point, electrification is not new. We've been, encouraging heat pump usage really since late 80s, early 90s. And in fact, our rate structure in Georgia is built that way to encourage winter heating, electric heating in the winter. And, we have been so successful with that. We have had occasions where we have set or close to set a winter peak. Now that we have such a prevalence of heat pumps in our service territory.
Yeah, I'll just add. So from our perspective, I'm glad you talked about rates because that's a real big challenge, right, for the consumer because we can't be out there hawking heat pumps, a switch from gas to electric, and then guess what? The bill goes up. And this is across the country with gas-dominant regions, we just can't be marketing heat pumps there yet. So what do? Well, I'll tell you what we do is we're not going in those regions with our big marketing campaigns. We're going in the Southeast where it's predominantly heat pump already. And we're just going from electric, where it's predominantly electric, and we're just going from electric resistance to heat pump, which is like a no-brainer. If you have an electric resistance, you know, just get rid of it. So anyway, but it is a big challenge. And what Massachusetts did is something utilities, you know, it's not easy, right? There's two things you need to do, right? You need to invest in green, which is hard, especially for states where the political climate is discouraging the switch, and you can't even market to customers and suggest that they switch, right? But, you know, also it's making it more affordable, making a switch, you know, you can't have the conversation about electrification with your customer if you can't make it cost effective for them. It can't happen. And that's the wall that utilities in those regions where natural gas is cheaper than electric are going to run into every single time. And that's why efficiency is, you know, such a big part of this, and the work that ICF is doing and others are doing to help ICF, to help, you know, utilities move into the electrification space is so important, because we're stuck if we don't figure out a way to make electricity cheaper for customers.
Again, I mean, it's got to come from everywhere.
Rates, you know, one of the things that I think came out of a study in University of California, I think it was Berkeley, was they looked at electric rates versus electric adoption, and it was so strongly correlated that it kind of threw them back. Right. And that's why the Southeast has a lot of electrification, because it's cheap electricity in the Southeast.
Cheap electricity, yeah.
Right. And you know, one of the things I think I say sometimes is it's kind of ironic, because when we've been doing all these efficiency programs and throwing everything at electricity, there was a time I went to a conference, it was I think it was a NEEP conference, that they said, you know, electricity should be priced higher, that way people would use less of it. Well, that's not been good. You know, if you look at California, they have really high electric prices, and it's going to be really hard to get people to switch from gas to electricity. And it's sort of this irony, right? This irony that a lot of electric co-ops have really fought tooth and nail to keep electric rates low, and have been a little bit demonized for it, because in the past that hasn't been the carbon solution. Right. And now it's like, wow, this is the biggest asset that we have. I know in Minnesota, for example, they do have heating rates. They have dual fuel rates, and you'd be surprised to say, why is an electric co-op who has no gas doing a dual fuel program? And it's because you can use electricity for a good part of the year, and then have a propane and benefit the consumer, and have the utility be better off. The one other thing I would say about the electric rates is that people get, and this group, you know, demand charges, not demand charges, this rate, that rate. We're fighting against ourselves sometimes on electric rates. And you got to think about the person who has a large propane tank in their yard, and in the winter they have to fill that thing up for $600. and so, you know, getting into, you know, arguments with people about whether they should change their rates or not change their rates, you really should look, is this person going to be better off than they would be on the propane? And, you know, give some benefit of the doubt that often cases, especially with co-ops, that their rates are trying to keep the price low for folks. And as long as the electricity can compete with that alternative, I think we should let that play out a little bit more, rather than coming in and saying, hey, we're electrification fans, you should change your rates so that it does this or that for cars or for heating. Because I think you get into some contentious situations that you don't need to be in. And if you were a gas or propane person, you'd be sort of being like, look at those guys fight with themselves. Like, we're winning here, right? Because they're arguing over demand rates and time of use rates and everything else, when we're just saying our product's cheaper. Yeah. So I'd be careful about that a little bit.
So maybe focusing on transitioning the grid as more of the investment versus fussing around with rates to sort of make it, you know, more cost effective. Yeah, I mean, just the mix of fuels. It's hard because natural gas is so cheap. Northeast is where, you know, fuel switching is happening like crazy because of the price of propane and oil. So you see customer behavior is really going to be, especially when it comes to heating and cooling that people don't care about. It's all going to be about their energy bill, right?
Absolutely. Any questions from the audience? Jordan.
So I really appreciate how Jill mentioned the workforce problems. And I have a question to all three on the panel. My company, Opinion Dynamics, we did a study for the CPUC looking at the workforce readiness for electrification, and we found that the workforce is not ready, and nor is it projected to be ready in 2030, and it's particularly disproportionately unready in disadvantaged communities.
Yes.
So I'm curious, what are your three organizations doing to prepare the workforce and the supply chain so that heat pump, so that plumbers do know how to install the electrical, et cetera, or they're comfortable with it, TOU integration perhaps, and that these things are actually on the trucks. So I'd love to hear from all three organizations what you're doing to prepare the workforce to achieve these dreams you're describing.
Since I raised it, I'll start. So that is really, so we have a sales and marketing team, and that they are riveted, that's their thing right now, is that workforce. So what are we doing? We have, I don't know if you all know this, but Energy Star has several partner groups. And we work with retailers, but now increasingly distributors, right? Because we're all into heat pump, and that's the channel. And then we have manufacturers, and then we have utilities, right? Okay, so, and we're working, and states are coming on board, and we have a new partner group called service providers, right? Who their job is to come into community and really help make the switch, and predominantly focusing on clean electric and the whole home and sort of that insulation piece that's really important to the switch. Yeah, so this team works with all of these stakeholders, particularly, I would say, manufacturers and distributors. We have a group called the Energy Star Heat Pump Water Heater Manufacturing Action Council, SMAC, and we meet with them routinely, and we coordinate with them to train all of their workforce. And then anytime a contractor or plumber has been trained, they come onto a list. We have what's called an installer finder. And when we promote a heat pump to a customer, we point them to the installer finder and say, this plumber, this contractor will be able to handily replace your product. But we also work with them on supply issues. You know, during COVID, you know, it was so hard to get any kind of product, let alone a heat pump. That's improving, and now it's just more about having a greater supply. This is the thing, you know, push-pull, demand, supply, demand, supply. They'll tell you, well, if they demand it, we'll have the products. So we're doing this dance where we're out there marketing the heck out of heat pump and demonstrating how we're increasing sales. And sort of the manufacturers are still a little dubious, but we're still pushing them. And we have training programs, and we'll go around and we'll talk to utilities. You guys gotta, just like the states, the IRA requires states to have a network of contractors. Utilities really need to do that too. Many of you have them. In fact, you know, NIA was the first folks a few years ago to provide us a list of qualified installers for heat pump water heaters. And so they work with all the utility members to provide that. So I know a lot of you are doing that. We will train, we go out, my colleague Nate Jutris goes out and trains. I mean, we're working with ICF, they're our main contractor. We're out there training the heck out of anybody who wants to be trained. And then we have a heat pump manufacturer council too, and they also developing an installer finder for heat pumps. So anyway, that's what we're doing. We're doing the best we can, but it's a heavy haul. Sorry, I spoke a lot. Go ahead, next.
Okay, I would say from a Southern Company perspective, that's definitely one of our tenets or one of our pillars that we're focusing on right now. And it's in everything that we do, from who we give our business to, what we expect of contractors who work for us. But then we're also planting seed that I'll talk about in a minute to equip that workforce and get it ready for our service territory and beyond. But I would say going back years, it's been a part of our supplier diversity program, where we are We have business unit goals to look at, disadvantaged, small and disadvantaged businesses, veteran-owned businesses, female-owned businesses, and minority-owned businesses. So we have very specific goals that we require of all of our business units, but then, as I mentioned, all of the people that we do work with. So a lot of our programs are done through implementation contractors, building trade ally networks and that type of thing. And so we have an expectation that they follow the similar practices that we do in our hiring and who we're awarding business to. And we want to have that presence in our community to grow those smaller disadvantaged businesses and to give them an opportunity to work for us. And then the final thing I would say is, the latest thing that electric transportation is really booming across our service territory, from a manufacturer standpoint, from a battery standpoint, from all of the suppliers that are going into these factories. One of the things that they want to look for is our workforce readiness. And, are we able to have, if they invest billions of dollars in building a factory in our footprint, are we going to be able to, are they going to be able to staff it with talented people? So we've got initiatives with each of the universities in our service territory where we have programs where we are teaching them about electric transportation. We're doing similar types of work with our trade schools across our service territory to get, not only to equip that workforce, but then to help us attract from an economic development standpoint to keep this EV ecosystem really growing and thriving in our services, our states.
And similar, we speak to trade ally programs across the country, and I think there's a couple issues with the workforce. One is that we've done a lot of home transitions from electricity to gas to electricity, and it's mostly that the people who come out don't want you to do what you want. We're like, we want to make this house all electric. Why would you want to do that? It's not that there's not a person there that will do the job. I mean, we have been remote places like Anza, California, where they have to train the co-op staff to do this because there's not local folks. But for the most part, it's kind of a mismatch of demand and kind of where the trade folks see the technology and what they're pushing. And there's sort of a wish that the trades would kind of create the demand. I'm not really convinced 100%, even though we have Electrify Minnesota coming up, there's just the Electroposium there about workforce, there's not enough people to do the work, because there's people that are putting HVAC in every day. They're just not putting in the electric stuff like people would want them to. I remember 20 years ago during ARA, the first stimulus, I was up in Maine and they had cash for caulkers. It was all over the news. Cash for caulkers, 2,000 caulkers needed, And I actually tried to start a business called Focus on Energy or something like that, Focus Energy or something. And you could go to a bank and get a blower door. You get a loan for a blower door. If you did that, you would have a blower door that you didn't use because the WAP program it took years to happen. When this happened, this IRA happened, there was the Inflation Reduction Act and there's these $14,000 rebates for homes. We immediately set up a program. We found people to do homes with funding from Wells Fargo, did the homes, no problem, a couple months. Billions of dollars, 2 years later, I don't think the government's done one home, right? And there's people, if you got ready and you dressed up and you said, the new market for this $billion-dollar market, let's get all the work, they wouldn't have anything to do unless they really believed in it. They'd be waiting on the government. So I think workforce is an issue. Jobs is a political issue. We talk about jobs. Workforce is an issue. They need to be trained. But really, they need to be convinced that this is a good product. And for that to happen, it needs to be beneficial for people. You're back where you started. You need to make sure you're not pushing it when it's not ready. When it is ready, you find the places where it is ready, where there's going to be an incentive that works, that saves people money, and you do it there. And then they tell their neighbor, this was great. You're jealous of me because I got this and you don't. And then the next person will do it. And there'll be somebody there to do that job. Just like there's someone there to clean every toilet in every McDonald's in the country. You can get somebody to put a heat pump if there's a market there. The problem is there's not a market there.
Right, the demand, yeah.
It is interesting too, right? Though there is a market, right? There are actors to serve it. I actually had an HVAC technician tell me the other day, they were recently at a conference, and they said that the organization is currently short 250,000 techs across the company or across the country just to do the work, and it's an aging workforce, right? And they're thinking within 5 years they're going to be short $500,000, right? This tech helped us do a system swap at our home, and I told him what I was into and what I did and what I wanted to do, and the first thing he said to me was that my cheapest and best way out of there was to replace my furnace with a furnace, right? Like even being well primed. So I get it, but it is interesting to me that like there is that shortage that you cite within the industry as a whole. And I think that, for people who are just grinding business, it's so much easier to sell that furnace than it is, right? So I think it's, it's incumbent upon us to both drive that demand and, support the market to deliver on it.
Yeah, and there needs to be a return on investment. I mean, they're not going to, they're running a business. They're making money. They're not going to install something that they don't think they're going to be able to sell. Two, they're concerned about follow-up, and so I think it's important. One of the things I didn't mention is that we're actually going to be developing not just, all the consumer outreach that we do, but we're going to be starting to do contractor outreach to really, get them excited about the business opportunity here. And it's not everywhere, right? So we're going to have to be geo-targeted and really work where, a network of contractors is needed, but also where there is a value prop for them, because it's not everywhere. And it gets into, because if they sell them a heat pump and their energy prices go up, they're going to blame the contractor, because the contractor is the one who's selling it. That's the channel. They're sitting at the kitchen table.
The contractor knows that they have the risk.
They have the risk. They have the risk. So anyway, yep. Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention there is an excellent, first of all, excellent discussion. There is a great paper by Lawrence Berkeley Labs from maybe 4 or 6 months ago that looks at the relative price of gas and electric and the starting point of housing stock, how it's heated and cooled today, and then models out, the paper I'm talking about, models out the benefit to the homeowner in terms of impact on the bill. Mm-hmm. And it's an excellent study because it gives you a very nuanced view. They do it at the regional level, but I think it's possible to take it to the home level. And I think it's an interesting call to action, building on Jill's point, which is that you really need to get down to the individual home level and speculate, how is the house heated and cooled today? And given the relative pricing of gas and electric in that region, will this home benefit? And I think only then, when you actually know that at the household level, can you start to craft messaging that's really going to resonate with that homeowner and avoid propositioning a home for a heat pump retrofit that's not going to benefit.
Well, we stay away from anyone that's not going to benefit, especially in our low income outreach program. It's going to shoot us all in the foot.
Yeah, and I think, especially to Keith's point, right? Like if we can get into the right markets where there are the right actors and get some success stories, right? Like where it benefits the customer and the grid, then we can kind of start to build on that momentum and that success.
Yeah.
I have a question, Jill, and particularly Keith, I think. I'm curious about the evolution of the technology itself. So as Jill knows, we've been working with energy efficiency technologies and products 30 years, and early versions of these technologies had lots of problems and quirks and that needed to get fixed, right, and worked out in the manufacturing process as Energy Star works with manufacturers and the industry groups, refine the efficiency of the product over time and the performance of it. Where are we at in terms of the trajectory of heat pump technology? Do we see advances in the technology still ahead, that there's more to be extracted out of the product, whether it's efficiency, whether it's performance, whether it's, remember with CFLs, you flip them on, they flicker, they're gray. And then there were performances that they were able to improve, but then LEDs came along, just leapfrog right over CFL. So I'm curious about that, because I think that's an issue in the contractor workforce. I've had HVAC contractors sit in my kitchen and say, don't do it. The technology is expensive to maintain, and those are the hidden costs, and you don't want to do it. My utility lost the sale in my kitchen with my contractor.
Right. Well, they're wrong.
I understand.
I'm just going to say one thing. So we got a lot of, we're like, why are you marketing heat pump, air source heat pumps in the Southeast when pretty much everybody has an air source? It's about 50% penetration, something like that. There's a lot of electric resistance still down there, but, it's because the old heat pump, the new heat pump, so much better. And I'm not an engineer, I don't do product development, but I bet you there's room for even more efficiency and performance because, heat pumps been around forever, right? And it's so improved. And that's the myths, right? Because people are like, my heat pump, and I'm not in love with my heat pump, even in the Southeast. But and they're so much more efficient now too. So there's been great gains. So that's why we're there. If you've got a heat pump, replace it with an Energy Star heat pump, and it's going to deliver even more efficiency for you. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, and these products last a long time compared to human. I mean, like a decade, right? So you have a bad experience, you remember for a couple of decades.
Oh yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think this is going to be that long of a transition. I mean, the products are better than the first gen. They're getting better. I have a heat pump in my car, for the heater. It's making its way into new construction. When you can have a good envelope, the retrofits in the homes is really a tough thing. I mean, I have had this experience. I've done it 3 different houses. They come in, you got wildly different bids from people. So why is one $6,000? And you can talk the person down thousands of dollars. So
random.
A problem with retrofitting homes, and there's a chance that it's drafty and the person's used to this and that and the other thing. That doesn't mean in the long term that these aren't taking off or aren't growing and growing market share compared to like a gas alternative or a propane alternative. 2 examples I'd give that are not heat pumps, electric screwdrivers. I think I do it with the first electric screwdriver would plug in and it'd be like it wouldn't work, and if it was a hard screw, it'd like start going, and now you can't get, a corded drill. It's all battery drill. And so you said, where on the spectrum are we? And school buses, they're still got some kinks, but I sit and I'm on the phone walking down the street and a diesel bus goes by and I'm on the phone and trying to scream over the call. Like, I wish that was an electric bus. And someday, I think if the costs come down, they're all going to be electric buses. Might not be my lifetime that everyone has a heat pump, but in the grand scheme of things, as long as you're getting good experiences in new construction, people aren't even going to, it's not going to be, you're not going to think about it as a homeowner. Even maybe the salesperson won't be thinking about it anymore. It's going to be done at a code level, at a design level, and the people are going to come in and be like, I got a new house. They're not going to be like, oh, I'm digging this place because it's got a heat pump instead of a Rinnai, propane furnace. So I'd say let's not look at little details and stories of bad things and let it cloud our judgment on the arc of where things are going. Yeah. And those bad experiences, people have the memory of an elephant. Is that what they say? They just remember that bad experience from 20 years ago. And as somebody was saying, old load control programs that didn't work. Now I don't do a load control program because we still have somebody who was around back then. So you got to be careful not to press it at the wrong time, but it will come. I think it will come.
Yeah, and ideally you don't want the consumer to have to think about it, right? The contractor is going to go in and I was talking to you in Capitol Hill. I live in Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. Everything's gas. And I had a contractor come in because my furnace is getting old. Yes, I'm Jill Vohr and I have a furnace, gas furnace. Yeah, everything's gas in Capitol Hill. But I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch to a heat pump. I'm going to do the right thing. And my system is on its last legs. But I had a guy come in and I was so happy because the guy came in. Actually, it's a really good Energy Systems. It's a small outfit and they're very pro technology and electrification and everything. So I wasn't surprised that he said, this is all we do. All we do is put in heat pumps now. That's all we do. I was like, that's great. So I don't have to think about it because my contractor is just going to say, yep, Yep, we're going to put it in the heat pump. So that's why I think the contractor is the most important thing. But I'll tell you, in terms of technical innovation, it's not just the heat pump technology, it's other products. So there's a portable heat pump that's coming out. And we're really getting excited about that. We want to give it the certification that it's just
window
sort of
heat
sits.
pumps.
Yes, window heat pumps. And it's great because it just sits on your window, so it's not going to fall out. Air conditionings are just, just the worst product in the world, a portable air conditioner, right? So this is great. It heats and it cools. It's great for multifamily LIDAC, so new products that make it easier to leverage the basics of the heat pump.
So about a year ago, SECC did a story or a study that was electrification at home and on the road. And I think one of the standout findings of that bit of work was that customers really do look to their utility as a trusted advisor on the shift in technologies. So maybe Bret, starting with you, like what role do utilities play in educating customers and helping them along these journeys?
Sure. Like I mentioned in my opening, you get these new technologies or these new products periodically that really, it's just a home run for utilities to give us an opportunity to get out there and talk to our customers. And so I would say that, we always talk about like house as a system and it's the interactive effect of everything that they care about because that's what's going to impact their bill. And so we have all along created tools that enable our customer to know what's going to help them with the decision, what's going to help them choose a product, know its impact on their bill, know how it's going to have an impact on the other things in their house. We've had online energy audits. We've had walkthrough observational energy audits. We've had investment grade energy audits. Videos of tips and things like that. We have a YouTube channel, information on our websites. We talked about bill adders yesterday or something like that. We still do some old school communication with our customers as well.
Love the calendar.
Yeah, but ultimately we just want to have that conversation with them, and it looks different for different people. I think it's just a matter of trying to put content out there and think through the lens of what our customers are going through.
Question, Brian?
I'm curious, in regions where heat pumps can be cost effective, if anybody's experimented with, you got $100,000 to spend to accelerate heat pump adoption, what portion should go to incentives that are going to lower the cost versus educating customers that are maybe considering switching about some of the benefits of heat pumps, whether they're bill related or comfort in their home, other aspects of it, to sort of say, like, what's the best way to spend this IRA or other funding to maximize adoption, minimize free ridership if somebody would have done it anyways, et cetera?
I'm biased in that. I just think it's the deal. People just don't have enough interest. And, yes, heat pumps provide comfort. There's no question about it. But I wouldn't say that the delta of comfort is that much different between like a boiler or furnace, in terms of heating. I think the real benefit is the efficiency, right? And the electrification, which depends on the grid, So it's hard to sell these things right now, given the unevenness of the country. But if you can go in a place where it's cost effective and you got some money from the government, or you have a program that has some, just put it all in the deal and structure it well so it's easy for customers to get, so they can just go. We work a lot with Home Depot and Lowe's, and you can go and buy a water heater. You have to find somebody who's going to install it properly and all of that. That's a whole nother thing we're working on them with. But the easier you make it for them, and again, it's the contractor. And if you just say, look, this is the time, be proactive. There's money out there. There's tax credits. There's this huge incentive. Do it now. This appeals to me, and I'm like all over heat pump, right? I'm waiting for DC to come on with IRA. Want the tax credit? I want the, because I don't have a lot of money. Anyway, my bias.
Yeah, I would also say we've been on hold. We spent some Wells Fargo money. We had $250,000, not $100,000, and we did houses right away. $20,000 a house. We did houses, showed it, made a video. We could do it, no problem. This is 2 years ago. There's $14,000 per house in the IRA in this low-income rebates, and so if I had $100,000, assuming this program's going to be around after the election, I would be looking to leverage that $14,000 per house with the $100,000 because that's going to be the rebates are going to be just for certain consumers. And if you can use your program to leverage that so that you can get because we won't spend any more money of a foundation on a house right now while there's $14,000 going to come out of the government. We've just been waiting, unfortunately. So I would really think, how can I leverage the IRA, assuming that it's not going to fall apart in your state. I don't think it will because I think the money's already gone to the
Obligated
states.
The money's been obligated. Yep.
It's just some of the obligated money for other things I think can be disrupted. The other thing I'd just say about the utilities and the role, the IRA and the BIL has a lot of infrastructure investments. And I'm always surprised when I go to electric utilities, electric co-ops who are like, oh my gosh, my state has a school bus mandate. I don't know if I like this, right? Not only because there's some consumers that are out there with tinfoil hats saying, school buses with electricity are going to catch fire or something. It's because they have single phase power to the school and they don't have the infrastructure. Maybe there's 2,000 people who live in the town and it's going to cost $200,000 for a charger. So they got to charge every person that lives there $1,000 because Washington, D.C. has a new, school bus policy. And I liken the electric infrastructure to roads and bridges. And if everybody was living in a field and somebody says, we're going to drop off trucks and cars for you. And they say, well, what about the roads? No roads, you'll figure that out. That's like what we're doing with buses and EV, solar panels and EVs. And so you need to invest in that infrastructure. And that's what this national infrastructure investment is. And we've had people who are against, that are not against buses, but like really, really nervous about it. And then we win a big grant to do three-phase power to the school, and they're going to be the biggest champions of those buses. And from the outside, it looks like, hey, these people are curmudgeons. They're against new tech. It's just because the infrastructure's not there. And so it's not investing in solar panels on everyone's house or buses in every school, or you need to invest in the system, the roads and the bridges to make this work. And so I think one of the things that we all can do as the electric sector is continue to advocate and say, if you want electric transition that's going to be good for the grid so that we're not going to have the brownouts, we really need to proactively invest in the, in especially, I think, rural areas where they're not equipped to do that. And the people there don't have a lot of money to just pay for infrastructure investments for this transition because everything's operating fine as it is. And they don't share all the benefits that will be of this technology. So.
Yeah, and then, we made a really conscious decision on this panel to kind of stay away from the whole attribution point, which we literally could spend several more hours on. But I do think that, where possible, where we can leverage multiple program fundings together to maximize benefit to customers and to deliver better programs, we'll do really well. Y'all, thank you so much. This has been a really engaging hour. I appreciate your time up here on the panel with us.